All right. I think we got it running. All right, cool. All right. Hey, good evening. Thursday night. It's been an interesting few days. I started looking at some Docker capabilities, and yeah, I'm late to the party. Thank you very much. But read a few blog posts, talked to a few others, and one of the things that have been in the backlog for Mass Transit since 6 was released is a .NET Core version of the host. So there's a project, MassTransit.host, which is it's a self-contained exe. You can drop assemblies in the folder and it'll host your components. And it's been an easy way to kind of have a standard platform for just dropping your code into and running. It made a few assumptions, which at the time made sense. I mean, it was built around AutoFac and had a few things, and it was basically an open source version of kind of a container host that we had built years ago and just kind of evolved it on. But the world has changed. Docker is kind of everything now, and it's whether it's running on Kubernetes in one of the various container services or running on Docker on your local machine. Basically, the entire ecosystem has really kind of embraced Docker as, the de facto container format, and everything can run Docker. I mean, I run Docker on my Mac, so obviously. So one of the things I wanted to go over and get some feedback on, because this is very early prototype stuff, and it's very much I mean, this is bleeding edge. This is an idea. It's a concept. I think it makes sense. I've been reading a lot of books on like SRE and how to do operational support and looking at how you can plug things in and having kind of a lot of standardized tools for metrics, monitoring, logging, and all that stuff. Makes a lot of sense. And it's hard to just say, oh, well, go ahead and do a file new project. And if you've watched any of my videos in the live coding series, all the different services are basically cut and pasting a program.cs around. And it's a pretty lengthy one because it's setting up the logging, the app insights, all of that. So this is kind of an idea. This is the direction I think I want to go. I want some feedback on it. Whether it's now or watching this later, just hit us up on Discord and kind of chat about it, because I think it's pretty cool. It's working for me, and I've been able to deploy my services. So I kind of wanted to walk through that. A lot of this stuff is fresh on GitHub already, because I had to get it on GitHub to get it to build. So if you're creeping around GitHub, you'll probably see some of this stuff. But if not, I'll kind of walk you through it. So what I want to start with, and I'm going to jump over to Rider, is I'm going to start with a sample project. And I'm just going to call it sample.platform for no better reason. And I have inside here, I have a consumer. So a consumer that just looks at sample command. Sample command is a simple message. It has a command ID and a string command. Doesn't get much simpler than that. But it's really just to show that I have a consumer that can accept a message. And all this does is it writes out by your command and writes out the command and then returns. Nothing fancy, just very simple. It uses iLogger so that it can log out. Great, awesome. Standard logging. That's another thing that I kind of went into going into this, is that pretty much everybody in the ASP.NET Core workspace, everybody's using dependency injection extensions. Everybody's using logging extensions. All that stuff is baked in by default by the generic host. So it just sort of makes sense to stick to those de facto standards. I mean, it's what's become normal. So you'll see a lot of use of that here because it is normal. And it's just assumed throughout that you're going to have that availability. So I have a unit test project, MassTransit Platform Tests. And I'm able to test my code. And I'm testing that in memory using the in-memory test harness. So I create up the test harness. I new up my sample consumer, which I use null logger because I don't really care about logging in the test. But if I wanted to, I could log it out to the test output. I start up the harness. I send a simple command to the test harness that just says, head to Tashi Station to pick up some power converters. A little Star Wars reference there. It is Star Wars, right? Yeah, okay. And then consumed, did I consume it? So if I run this test, I can verify that my consumer works. It consumes the message. Everything's great. Now I want to deploy this somewhere. So I haven't written any Windows services, anything like that. I just wrote a consumer and a message type that I can consume, and I want to deploy this as a microservice, whatever. Just I need to get this service up in production somewhere. So normally I would like go out and build a service, run it up like that. I'm going to show how this new MassTransit platform would work. So the first thing I would do is if I look in sample platform, I can see that I have one NuGet package reference here called MassTransit.platform.abstractions. And this NuGet package, if I go into the NuGet, MassTransit.platform, MassTransit platform. Wow, it isn't indexed yet. Or maybe it's just so not used compared to everything else that, there we go. 0 total downloads. How is that possible? So there's the NuGet package. It's MassTransit Platform Abstractions. Its dependencies are MassTransit and the MassTransit extensions dependency injection. One thing that I'm curious about, should new versions of this be released with every build of MassTransit, or should I keep the platform separate from the runtime? Something I need to figure out. I don't know how versioning and all will work with NuGet, or if I need to just release a new version every time I release a new version of MassTransit, or if I should keep the packaging separate so I can add that separately. Seems to be like things are tagged different ways. I'm not sure, so curious what people's thoughts are there. I'm fairly new to the Docker world, so getting an understanding of what's kind of common. You can read a dozen different opinions online, and I'm sure I'll get a dozen different opinions, but it's something I'm curious about, because it's right now it's a completely separate project, a completely separate repo on GitHub, so I'm just curious. So by adding that reference, I now have access to the iPlatform startup interface, which has two very simple methods. Configure MassTransit, which is where I can add my consumers, and I'm adding this consumer specifically. I could also say something like add consumer from namespace containing sample consumer, and it would automatically add that for me as well. So I could change that to that, should be the same, but we'll leave it like it is because I know this works. Maybe we'll try that as an exercise if we have time. And then configure bus, which lets me have access to the bus factory configurator, so I can do weird things in here, like if I want to use message data or anything, set up a message scheduler, although I'm going to try to make that so it's baked in based on specifying a scheduler type. But yeah, so that's how that all works. And that, as you can imagine, is just called from the platform when you start up your code. And you can have as many of these as you want. It does support multiple registration. So if you want to dump a bunch of assemblies into the folder, you can put as many assemblies as you want with their own platform startups, and it will host them all using the conventions for configure endpoints. So it will use the endpoint name formatter, which if you want to use a different one, you can register a different one in here. I wouldn't register multiple because I think it would probably freak out, but it always takes the latest the way MSDI works. So it would just, the last one registered is what it would use. So by default, it uses the, I think it's the kebab case formatter right now. So that's all I have to do to my consumer to add it to the platform at this point. Now, as part of this, I've created a Docker file to build this. Now the Docker file to build it is, you can see it's copying the CS proj, it's restoring it, so it's using multi-step builds within Docker. It's then doing a Docker publish to an app folder, and then it's referencing MassTransit.platform latest, which has been pushed to Docker Hub. It sets the workdir to app. It sets the arg of mtapp equal to /app. I think I have to do that. And then it does a copy from. So basically, I'm just copying the release publish from that CS proj to that to a new image based off MassTransit.platform. So if I go out and I build that, which I think I've already done, but I don't think it hurts to do it again. Like I said, all new to me. So if I do builds Docker, yeah, it's already done. So it caches very fast. Nice. Multi-step. Great. Awesome. So it did all that stuff. It did its build. Now, up in the parent folder of this, I have a Docker Compose file. So what does this look like? Let me drag that into here. So the Docker Compose, which I don't know how to make the font bigger. There we go. You can see here is my service. Service is sample.platform. I think it's supposed to automatically build that. I don't know if it does. I had mixed results. The container name, the networks. I set up a network within my Docker Compose for the 2 machines. And I also am adding RabbitMQ in here. So I have RabbitMQ. I've given it a host name of RabbitMQ. I've specified the image, which is MassTransit RabbitMQ. So if you go out to Docker Hub, you can see that MassTransit has a number of different packages already created, or I guess they're Docker images. And MassTransit RabbitMQ, you can see it's based off the RabbitMQ image. The Docker file is up there. I actually go ahead and I add in the delayed message exchange and unpack that, configure it, enable it. So it's basically RabbitMQ configured the way I would run it. And I've created that for RabbitMQ. I've also created it for ActiveMQ. So ActiveMQ has a similar one, which I think you can see the Docker file up there. It installs ActiveMQ. All of these are running on Alpine Linux, so they should be nice and small. But I download that down, install that, set it up, and actually expose the volume so you have persistence. I haven't done that for RabbitMQ yet. I probably need to do that at some point. And then the actual MassTransit platform is out here, which you can see the Docker file. It actually builds it out, deploys it, and then specifies. I think since I specify that there, I don't have to do it twice. So maybe I'll take that other one out. Again, learning. And then I expose ports 80 and 443, which I think is right, but probably wrong, but I'll figure that out. And that's for the MassTransit platform runtime. So that's all the stuff that's up on Docker Hub. None of this is documented yet. Sorry, I just haven't had a chance to write any documentation. So now I'm going to run that. So if I look, that's my Docker Compose file. If I go out here and do Docker Compose up, I should see both services start. So the platform started. You can see it shows configuring consumer. Oh, it's trying to connect to RabbitMQ. RabbitMQ isn't ready yet, so obviously it's going to keep retrying in a loop because resilience matters. As soon as the RabbitMQ gets up and running, you'll see it's up. Okay, now RabbitMQ is up, has all the exchange plugins for delayed exchange, consistent hash exchange. And our retry, we connected to RabbitMQ. We can see we declared the exchange name sample. We declared an exchange name sample platform sample command for our message type, bind to the exchanges, set our prefetch count, and we're off to the races. So our consumer is up and running. If we go to look at RabbitMQ, which is running in that Docker container, we can see from the connections that I have one connection. And that connection has a consumer, and that consumer tag is there, and the queue name is sample. And it's up and running. And it's a clean Docker image because I didn't attach any storage to it. So it's basically like a clean, fresh image with nothing ever run on it, which is nice for testing. I don't know what that is. That's like an old version. Wonder where that came from. Not going to sweat it. I think until you actually destroy the container, it keeps the image around until it's actually destroyed. Anyway, so we can look at our sample. We can see that our bindings are there. We have a binding to sample. We have a sample platform sample command, which is the message type the consumer gets. So all that stuff's set up. And all I did was Docker Compose up it. I have a nice clean RabbitMQ. Now I want to test that. I created a simple console application that just publishes that message. And I'll show the code for that in a second. So if I enter a command, it's like flush the capacitors. I don't know, whatever we want to say. If we go back here, we can see there's our debug log. By your command, flush the capacitors. We have the RabbitMQ receive. Message was published, message was received. So it's up and running. It's running in a container. I could put this on any container farm. Docker is what I'm running locally. If I go to http:/localhost 5,000 health ready. I can see that my health checks are there, so I can verify that the endpoint's actually up and running. If I come in here and I wish I knew how to stop one of the containers. That would be interesting. Oh, I think, yeah, I don't know. I think I can do a Docker PS. Yeah, if I look at Docker PS, RabbitMQ I can see is healthy because I actually have health checks for that are checking that the endpoint is available. I run the RMQ control status. I didn't put a health check for the .NET service, but by hitting the web endpoint, I can see it's there, it's ready. Yeah, so that's working. The nice thing that is about that, oh, one other thing I wanted to show. So my simple console app is just a program CS. It doesn't have any relationships to the other project. In fact, I actually copied the command out of the sample platform project with the same namespace so that I'm able to actually publish that command and get it dispatched to the consumer. So MassTransit correlates by message type or connects messages to consumers by publishing through message types. So the full type must match, namespace, command, all of that must match. So if I put this in sample console sample command, it wouldn't get it because it's a different type at that point. You can see I just create RabbitMQ. By default, everything is created with localhost. And then I just read the lines and I just call publish with the sample command. So pretty simple test app. And you can see if I go back out there, I can just send messages all day long and they'll just get processed and I'm logging those out. To tear that down, I Control C, it exits cleanly. We'll stop RabbitMQ, that's all done. Yeah, so this is, I think, pretty cool. I mean, I think it's a lot cleaner than the old host. I think it gives me an easy way to deploy and to test locally without having to stand up a bunch of different console windows. I can just run it all out here and have all the output reflected to the window, hit Control C when I'm done. I know you can, I believe you can debug in Docker containers. I don't know how all that works. I've never actually tried to do it. So, but I'm sure there's probably a million blog posts out there where I could find them. But I imagine I could do that. I can also just run it locally. I mean, I don't have to, I mean, when I ran my unit tests, I ran those locally. Yeah, so that's all I kind of have for right now. I just wanted to kind of introduce this, walk through it, and kind of show how it works. Oh, I wanted to show a couple more things. So by having this platform with the separate runtime, I think one of the reasons I want to kind of version this separately, and again, I'm not entirely sure there. It depends how much friction is in the process. But like I want to be able to go and turn things on or off. So let's do one thing real quick. Let's say I want to change to ActiveMQ. So I'm going to go back out here. I've already stopped this. I'm going to look at my Docker Compose. And I want to change this to ActiveMQ instead. So to do that, I'm actually going to go out and take the code that I know is already out here and works. I'm going to switch to the ActiveMQ branch. And I'm going to pull the ActiveMQ section out. And I'm going to first, so I'm going to get rid of the RabbitMQ part. Take that out. I'm going to put ActiveMQ in. I'm going to set an environment variable on the project that says MT_transport equals ActiveMQ. Now my console app is going to have to be changed to work with that, which I'll have to do separately. But I don't even know that I necessarily need to do that part of it. So I've changed that. Now when I do Docker Compose up, you can see that it's starting to load Java, it's starting that, it's configuring, it's trying to connect to ActiveMQ. It didn't connect to ActiveMQ because ActiveMQ isn't up yet. It now did connect to ActiveMQ. Get the topic, get the queue name, get the sample. And now my project is up and running on ActiveMQ. All I did was change and add an environment variable, pick a different Docker container to run ActiveMQ instead of RabbitMQ. And now I have that there. So if I go to, I think it's localhost 8161, something like that. Yeah, ActiveMQ. So I go in and I manage my broker, use the default passwords. And now I can see that I have connections. I have this connection here. It's via TCP. It's talking to the queues, consumer sample virtual topic. So that's for the publish. I'm listening to the queue sample. And I have a connection to the topic for temp. No, that's just the advisory. That doesn't do anything. Yeah, I have my consumer for the publish, I have my consumer for the send, and it's all up and running. You see it has 4 for my prefetch count, which is what I set. And that's all in there. Subscribers, I don't know if I have any of those. I'm not sure how that all works. Non-durable topic subscribers. Yeah, because that's what that is. That's a connection. So yeah, ActiveMQ up and running. I'm connected to that. That all worked. Which is good, because if it didn't work, I'd feel kind of dumb. I can tear that down. I closed out my Docker Compose file. Just take those changes out. Yeah, so if I just want to get this out, yeah. I want to discard those lines. Oh, yeah, I need to discard that too. Okay, so now if I go back here and do a Docker Compose, should come up, should come back this time to RabbitMQ. Right on. Should connect once it retries. It uses an exponential retry, so it's completely random when it's going to actually go out and try it. Oh, now RabbitMQ is coming up. That's good. We should retry our connection shortly. Yeah, there we're up. Now we're up and running. Back on RabbitMQ. So one more thing I want to show that's kind of cool about being able to have this platform separate is we're going to go back into my Docker Compose. And I'm going to add one more thing to it. So let me go back over here. Where did I put that file? I'm missing a file. I had it saved. Shoot. Now I gotta go looking. Let's see how back my back buffer goes. Oh, almost. Perfect. That's what I want. So one of the other things I can do is I can pass environment variables into this container. So let's say I want my service to add support for application insights. So if I say environment, and I say application insights instrumentation key equals, and you have to like double underscore these things. But I want to set that environment variable because I want it to read that configuration value. And now if I do Docker Compose up, you can see right here, configuring application insights was added to the log. Now, any of the diagnostic information that would be provided or logged by Application Insights is going to be recorded by the process just by enabling it within the platform. I didn't have to go modify my consumers or anything to do that. Which means now if I go out here to my console app, which has been running this whole time, by the way, it just, and RabbitMQ's been up and down and uninstalled even, so it's still running there. And yet it's reconnected under the covers, because that's one of the nice things about being resilient, is if something dies, you come back up. But you can see 6, 7, 9, all processed there. What was it, 6 of 9? I can't remember what the Borg was. I never watched that late versions of Star Trek. So. Okay, that's done. If I go out to my App Insights, I would see those traces out there. I'm not going to do that right now. Oh, thank you. 7 of 9. See, I never watched whatever version of Star Trek that was. I stopped after Picard was done. And I'm not meaning the new Picard. I mean like the Picard back before it was in high definition. So that's how it works. That's kind of the idea. I want feedback on it, because if this is going to be something I'm going to continue to pour some energy into, I want it to be useful. To me, it seems useful. I think I would use it. From what I've seen, it's out there. I've read a few articles about how to do unit testing, so that's one of the things I want to cancel or attack as well, is like how to be able to run my integration tests in Docker locally with like RabbitMQ running. So it's something I'm thinking about. Feedback on the Docker files, settings, stuff like that. It's all up on Docker Hub. All the repos are on GitHub already, so you can see there's a ton of them that were recently created. Docker ActiveMQ, and these are built automatically by Docker Hub. The platform has the platform code. You can look at the runtime in there, just feedback on that. But yeah, this is what I'm thinking will replace MassTransit's host. So thanks for watching. Hopefully it's a good intro. Definitely hit us up on the Discord server. The link of it is on the documentation site right on the top right. You can see, get in and join us on Discord. Yeah, other than that, that's all I had for now. Hopefully it was informative. Looking for your feedback. Thanks a lot for joining. Talk to you later.